Another benefit of the command pattern is that it gives us the ability to implement undo mechanisms. Let me show you how this works. So here's our command interface. We can introduce a new interface called Undoable command. So this interface extends the command interface, so it will inherit the declaration of the execute method, but it will also introduce a new method called unexecute. Now you might be wondering why I didn't add the unexecute method in the command interface. The reason is that not every command is undoable. For example, let's say we're building a word processor. We can make the text bold. That is an undoable command, but saving the document is not an undoable command. We cannot undo the save operation. As another example, think of zoom in and zoom out. These are not undoable operations, okay? So we introduce the undoable command interface and then implement it in a class like bold command. So this class is going to have two methods, execute and unexecute. Now earlier we talked about the memento pattern. I told you that we can use the memento pattern to implement undo mechanisms. Now, what is the difference between the memento and command pattern when it comes to undo operations? Well, with the memento pattern, we store the changes in the state of an object. So we store multiple snapshots over time. Now, sometimes storing these snapshots can be expensive. For example, let's say we're building a video editor. A video is a large file. So storing multiple snapshots of a video is going to be very expensive. It's going to waste a lot of memory. In those situations, it is better to use the command pattern because every command knows how to undo itself. So we don't have to store multiple snapshots of an object. For example, think of the resize operation. If the user resizes a video, all we have to store is the original dimension of the video, not the entire snapshot of the video object. We only store the previous dimension. And then if we want to undo that operation, we'll resize the video back to its original dimension, okay? Now let's see how we can use this bold command in an application. So here's our bold command. I've introduced a field here called previous content. With this, we can store the previous content of the document before we made the text bold. Now you might argue that this is similar to the memento pattern, and that is true because I'm storing the previous state of an object. But this is just implementation detail. I'm going to keep things simple and use patterns that you are familiar with. If we had a resize command here, we could simply store the original dimension of video. Okay? Now this command object needs to talk to a document object. This is where we implement the actual business logic. So our document class is going to have a method like make bold. And when we call the execute method of this command object is going to forward that request to the document object. Okay. Now, our command also needs to talk to a history object. This is like the history object you have seen before. It has two methods, push and pop. Pretty straightforward. Now let's look at the implementation of the execute method. There are three things we need to do here. First, we call document.getContent. We get the current content of the document and store it in the previous content field. Next, we call document.makeBold. So we're delegating or forwarding the request to a document object. And finally, we tell the history to store this command object. So this is the last command that we have applied. Okay. Now let's look at the implementation of the unexecute method. This is pretty straightforward. We call document.setContent to the previous content. If we had a resize command, we could resize the video back to its original dimension. Okay. Now there is one more piece to this puzzle. We need to introduce a class called undo command. This is like the undo menu that we have in a lot of applications. In the execute method of this class, we call history.pop. This will remove and return the last command that was applied. So we get that command and then unexecute it. Every command knows how to unexecute itself. So this is how we can use the command pattern to implement undo mechanisms. Next, I'm going to show you how to implement this in code.